Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are joining me from. I'm speaking to you from Nigeria, so it's morning over here. All right, thank you for joining me this morning. I still remain Deborah Inyone Oni, your emerging tech. All right, thank you. I would like to hear from you. Kindly drop in the chat your name, where you're joining us from. Thank you so much. So we are here this morning to spend some 30 minutes together. I promise not to take more than 30 minutes of your time, where we'll be having some educational insights into the topic blockchain and Web3, understanding Nigerian regulations and the legal implications. So, of course, we have 30 minutes within which we have to do this discussion. So, we'll be limited. We're not going to get everything, we'll just discuss some aspects. You can definitely reach out to me or to any other person in the space that understand this, and you can discuss further in terms of the regulatory implications or the legal implications. I would also like to hear from you as we discuss. You can drop your insights in the comment section. I'll be glad to know and hear from you. All right. So basically, if you've been following me in some so as to refresh our memory. All right, so we'll be talking about blockchain again briefly, and Web3. Blockchain we already know is a all right. I believe we're together and you can all hear me. All right, thank you. So we said blockchain is a decentralized if you have any idea or any way you want to explain the blockchain in a simpler way, please. Okay, you'll be able to have an idea of what is required of you. Let me know that we're together. All right. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Drop in the chat box. All right, thank you. So, as we were you need to know what that requirement entails. So I would like to get your own idea in the comments. If you can't hear me, kindly drop in the comments. And if you have any question, drop in the comments. We will address at some point. Yes. So if you are operating within the virtual asset space, you are required to obtain license. You cannot just come to Nigeria and just start operating like it's a free air, right? So the requirements for that, you will be able to see in the guidelines for virtual asset service providers. And then for some of the steps that SEC, which is the Securities and Exchange Commission of Nigeria, has taken, is the fact that we have things like ARIP, which is the accelerated incubation regulatory, the accelerated regulatory incubation program, right? And then we have the regulatory incubation program also. This is to help onboard the virtual uh, firms, those that operate and transact within the crypto space, to onboard them. And then the regulatory incubation program, which is the RI, is to help assess the business model in real markets within a supervised environment, right? So this, it is through this that they are able to see the viability of the business and then give approval for operation. So you would want to understand what the ARIP, which is the Accelerated Regulatory Incubation Program, and then the RI is all about, and how you can get onboarded into these incubation programs, right? So these are very, very important things that you have to put into consideration within the Nigerian ecosystem if you are operating within the blockchain space or the virtual asset space. So apart from that, we do have, I mentioned earlier the fact that data privacy is a big deal for every jurisdiction, right? And Nigeria is not an exception. So the NJPA is something you have to have recourse to be in compliance. with what the Nigerian Data Protection Act says, right? So you can be in compliance and not fall on the other side of the law. So if you have any question, like I said, you should drop in the chat. Yes, and then we'll address it. So in terms of the classification of your virtual assets and all that, of course, these are things that you can have details from your regulatory representative in Nigeria, right? So the idea of this session is to point you to the fact that you need to be in compliance and that there are requirements for you to operate within the Nigerian ecosystem, and that of course Nigeria is putting its own effort to be able to regulate and then at the same time balance the interest of the populace or the consumers with innovation. And as a result, you should also try your own best to be in compliance, know what the law says in terms of obtaining licenses, in terms of what you need to do to get the approvals. And then, of course, you need to know what to do to be in compliance in terms of data privacy, also data protection, so that as you are creating your various solutions within the blockchain space, you will not go against the provisions of the law, right? So apart from the that we have spoken about, and of course, we do have other aspects in terms of the NFIU. If you are operating within the virtual space, ML, KYC, right? And then, of course, the NFIU in Nigeria, you're supposed to do some reporting if you are within the virtual space. So these are things that you should be aware of. So if you don't even have the details, you can reach out to your legal representative to be in compliance with the requirements of what the Nigerian legal system or regulatory system says. So you want reports to the authority, the NFIU, and so you can stay in compliance, because Nigeria is very, very serious about that and complying to the international standard. So you, in the Nigerian system, you should know what it entails and what the requirements are, what is required of you as a startup or as an established organization within the space, so that so we have spoken about the AML, the anti-money laundering, and then know your customers. You are supposed to take this with all forms of seriousness. And then that way you can actually say that you are in compliance with the provisions of the law. There are so many other provisions that are there, but these are to direct you to secure ones because we don't have much time. Like I said, if you have questions or any comments, please drop in the chat box. And at every other subsequent live sessions, we will be dealing with any of the legal implication or the regulatory implication of your choice or that you want me to address. If you want us to address the data privacy, data protection in details, we will set out a more detailed time that we can address all those. So basically, you are required to be in compliance with the provisions of the law within the Nigerian legal system, regulatory system, if you are operating in the blockchain landscape, the virtual asset space. So what is required of you if you are a legal personnel here? Of course, you are to understand the laws that relate to the transactions within the blockchain space and all the innovations around the blockchain, whether the virtual assets, service providers, and everything that relates to the blockchain, and advise your clients rightly. So you are to advise them to be in compliance with the law, right? So your basic role is to have that understanding of what the blockchain, the unique nature of the blockchain, then understand what the law of the land says. Yes, we're not there fully with a robust regulation yet, but for the ones that we have, or the existing ones that we have, that we're adapting to it, and the various guidelines and regulations that are coming up to be able to tackle some of the problems or regulate the transactions within the blockchain virtual asset space. You have to understand that and advise your client to be in compliance. And then, of course, you should have that understanding so that even when you are helping with the crafting of contracts, you can be able to do that, having the provisions of the law in mind. And then, of course, in terms of policy, with that understanding, you can actually advocate for policies in terms of having a robust regulation within the land. So while we adhere to the ones that we have on hand, we will work towards understanding more and advocating for a robust regulation, right? So these are some of the roles you can play as a legal in that space. And so, and from that, of course, we have about. If you can hear me, drop in the comment section. If you can hear me, drop in the comment section. If you can hear me, drop in the comment section. All right, thank you. Okay, so I would like to hear from you if you want us to address any specific regulatory provision or any of the legal implication around this whole discussion. I'm open for further discussions and then for comments if you can hear me. Okay, thank you. The network intercepted a bit, but we'll keep on going. So what we have is the legal implication is the fact that some of these things pose a challenge to the existing legal provisions, to the existing laws. And so while we're adapting that and we're working towards, working to adapting these existing laws to this unique blockchain with its own unique kind of norms and rules that it has come with, which is majorly decentralization, which of course is also posing a problem in terms of regulation. It behoves on us to understand and and see how we can help for compliance with the existing laws or with the regulations that have been put in place while amendment is being made to the existing ones, or while new regulations are coming up to be able to regulate the various innovations around the blockchain space. So as legal personnel, we have a great role to play within this space. And for you as a business provider, a virtual asset service provider, or in any other role that you play within this blockchain ecosystem, you owe it to yourself to be in compliance with what the laws of any of the jurisdictions that you intend to operate business to comply with the provisions of the law. And like in our own case in Nigeria, it is very, very important that you are in compliance with both getting of your license for operation, with compliance with the data protection regulations in terms of and know your customer provision in terms of reporting to the NFIU. There are so many things you need to do within the space, and it's not like business as usual and you feel you because it's a digital transaction you can just come up and start operating. So the only time you are legally recognized to be operating within the Nigerian ecosystem is when you have followed the provisions of the law, when you have followed the requirements for getting the licensing, getting the necessary approvals for you to be in operation in the space, right? So these are some of the things we want to consider. The purpose of this is not to overwhelm you with lots of information, because of course we are in an age of information overload. Is to break down some of this information and then make it very, very simple for you to understand, to just tell you the simple things like understand that, okay, SEC is the one regulating and giving you the some of the giving you the direction on what the regulation says, and then giving you the direction from the guidelines that have been put in place for virtual asset service providers, that you need to get your licensing, and the requirements are contained in such guidelines to direct you, point you towards that direction for you to go there. And if you don't know how to get it, you can contact or consult with your legal personnel, right? And then of course to make you understand that these things are very important in terms of compliance in every aspect. It's very, very important. It is not something that you say, okay, I can probably try and comply with the AML. We know how some of these things could be complicated and pose some forms of hardship for startups or for organizations to comply with all. But as it is, you have no choice other than to be in compliance, while the regulators also are working towards how to have a balance between maintaining the interest of the populace, and then of course fostering innovation also, because the whole idea about regulation is not just to stifle innovation, it's not just to bring about regulations or laws that would complicate issues for you not to be able to operate within the ecosystem. Yes, if we have very favorable and robust regulations, it can actually attract the right investments into the jurisdiction. And so we're all aware of this. The regulators are aware of this and working around it. While we're working around all that, the ones that are existing, we should ensure that we stay in compliance. And if you have no idea in how to be in compliance, you should seek the necessary uh, inquiry from the right authority so you can be in compliance. So apart from that, on other sessions, we'll probably address the role of CBN. I will address the role of NIDA and any other of the regulatory bodies within the blockchain space and the virtual asset space, right? So if we have any question or you have any contribution, I would like to see that in the comments, so we address that as we will be rounding up in the next 2 minutes. 30 minutes will be complete in the next 2 minutes. So it's been a very great and wonderful time with you all. here today. And I hope that this session, as short as it is, you've been able to pick one or two things and you're able to run with it. And it is to also open you up and spur you towards further understanding, and then for you to make the necessary inquiries throughout the necessary questions to those in the space to be able to direct you, right? So you cannot come without registration, without approval, and just start operating because you feel it's operating in the digital space. And if you have misconceptions that, oh, Nigeria, I'm sure I'll be able to find my way around it, it's not so. It's not so. So you need to be aware of how critical these things are so you can be well directed and not fall on the other side of the law, right? So thank you for your time here today. I haven't seen any question in the comments. And as a result, I will be having another session and we'll keep, the regulatory landscape and the legal implication is something that we cannot exhaust in one sitting. So if we take another session, we can address other aspects. And based on questions that you probably put in, maybe when you're watching the replay and you have any aspect you seek for clarification, you could just throw it in the comments, reach out, and then we will be able to schedule another session to address that, and then probably have a conversation around that to be able to simplify some of these things and make it relatable and understandable for those who probably feel that the blockchain space is so complicated. So the essence of this is not just to come and sit and quote laws for you and get you confused about this whole thing, but to really bring it down in a simplified way that you have an idea that there are requirements, there are things that are required of you to do, and that these are some of it. That's what we have pointed you to. But giving you this list is not excluding the ones we have not listed. And so if there's a specific aspect of the regulatory framework or the legal implications you want to understand, feel free to chat me up on it here on LinkedIn and we'll take the conversation further. So kindly connect with me. Let's take this conversation further for us to understand better and for others to be able to plug in and understand that the blockchain is not as complicated as it probably sounds in some person's ears. And then they get to understand that while we're building solutions within this space, we also need compliance with the laws of the various jurisdictions where you intend to build your solution or where you intend to transact. You build with compliance in mind from the onset. And so you don't build and just throw out and start, breaching some of the provisions of the laws. So you build with compliance in mind. You build with provisions of the law in mind, imputing it from the beginning, getting to understand what does the data protection regulation says. And then you try to juxtapose, especially in areas like the blockchain immutability as against data protection. So you know where the nature of blockchain will probably not work in compliance with the provisions of the law, and you are able to factor that into the design process in from the very onset of your solution. And so things like this, when you are able to do that, I'm sure it makes it easier for people to have trust in your solutions and for you to be able to get the licenses, right? Because if you are in compliance with the provisions of the law, if you are able to factor the provisions of the smart contract into your solutions, and we don't have to debate so long about the validity and the enforceability of your smart contract, I mean, it makes it very easy for the solution to be accepted, and that way you can actually canvas the good things around your solutions, and then during the testing period it makes it easier also for that approval to be given. So until I come your way in the next LinkedIn live session, stay in touch with me here on LinkedIn. Let's connect. Let's take the conversation further. I would like to hear from you during the replay of this LinkedIn live session. So drop your comments. I'm still waiting for your comments, your questions. Thank you so much. I remain Deborah Inyone Uni, the emerging tech lawyer. Thank you so much. Do have a lovely day or a lovely night or a lovely morning, depending on where you joined us from. Thank you so much and bye.